Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm starting a new series on what to do with makeup products, or maybe I should call it more of an explanation of what makeup products are. So this came out of a number of conversations I've had with people in my real world who just get overwhelmed and stumped with all these makeup products we have these days. It's not as simple as it used to be with just foundation and lipstick. It's now contouring and highlights and primer, and it can be overwhelming without somebody to kind of explain it to you and kind of take you by the hand and explain what it's all for. So today I'm going to do part one of the series, and that's going to be base face products. That rhymes. At first I was going to do all the face products, but then I quickly realized there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to save things like contouring and highlighter, bronzer, those kind of things for a separate video. So today is just the absolute basics. So that's foundation, concealer, setting spray, primer, and powder, if I haven't mentioned that one already. So this video is probably going to be quite long because I'm going to explain and discuss each product as I go, and I've got a few examples here to kind of explain what I'm talking about. But if you do want to skip ahead, I'm going to list in the description box the time for each section, because you might already be an expert at most of these. There might be just something in particular you want to know about. So let's get started. So firstly, I'm going to talk about primers. Now, I'm pretty new to primers myself. I've only used a few of them, but a brief explanation is that it's a serum type formula that you put all over your face, and the idea is that in the same way that if you're painting a house, you would put a primer down first. It's the same thing for painting your face, so to speak. So it smooths the surface and primes it for what you're about to put on it. So in terms of a face, it'll fill in your pores and smooth out your skin. So one, this makes the foundation go on better and smoother. So you can even Google side-by-sides of foundation with and without primer, and you'll see the difference. Without primer, you can see all the pores and the lines, whereas when you do use primer, it's a much smoother surface. It won't clear everything, it won't make your skin perfect, but it will reduce just those more textural differences in your skin. But also, in addition to that, it also makes your makeup last longer. Part of this is due to the fact that there's a barrier between the oils in your skin and the makeup itself. So there's like a protection layer so that throughout the day your oils and the natural things that come out of your skin won't break up the makeup. And another thing I found with some primers is that because you've got that protective barrier, it actually protects your skin as well. Again, this depends on what primer you're using. Sometimes if they're really chemical heavy, it might make you break out, so do be careful when trying out new ones. But I found with some of them that actually, because it's protecting my skin, that when I wipe off my makeup, my skin is in really good condition compared to when I used to wear makeup without a primer, because my pores aren't being filled with foundation every day, it's just primer, which sounds bad, but because most of them are like a silicone base, it comes off quite easy and it doesn't eat into your skin as much. So I've got some examples here. So the ones that I've used are the Hourglass Mineral Veil Primer. This is a really popular one, really expensive though. I found it to be quite good. When I first got it, I actually didn't like it. I thought it didn't really do much for my skin and made me oily, but I found that over time, I picked it up again, tried it again, and found that it actually, I think it depends what foundation you wear it with. So I find in summer this doesn't work so well, but for the rest of the year it's really good. Some other examples is the Benefit Professional. This is just a sample size, it's usually much longer. But this is a nice one, particularly if you have quite large pores. The idea is that you kind of, instead of just rubbing it on your skin like a lotion, you actually kind of press and smear it into the pores to fill them up, and then dab it in. This I find good if you want that really HD finish, like a really smooth look, but I wouldn't wear it every day because while it's good for filling in pores, it's not so good for making your makeup last longer, or at least I didn't find that anyway. And another one which I got recently is the Maybelline Baby Skin. This is a really affordable drugstore one. I found this isn't as good as filling in my pores, but it does make my skin feel good after wearing it. It's really good at protecting your skin. So, I mean, there's tons of other options you can find at the drugstore or at the high-end stores, but these are just an example of the ones that I've used. Next thing is foundation. My skin used to be very oily, but over the last few years my skin's become more dry. So I would say at the moment it's a combination skin type because it can get oily a little bit just in this section here, but generally it's quite dry, and if I use mattifying products then they actually dry out my skin way too much. So firstly, to explain what I mean by mattifying, because this was something that was new to me a few years ago, there's a difference between foundation formulas. So I used to think they were all the same, ignorant little me, but there's actually foundations for dry skin types and there's foundation for oily skin types. So if you've got oily skin, you want something that has a matte finish. Usually they say this on the actual formula. So for example, I've got the Rimmel Stay Matte foundation here. I loved this one when I had really oily skin. This is incredibly matte, so I wouldn't use this if you have dry skin at all. Combination maybe just in your oily areas, but if you have oily skin, this is incredible. It's very mattifying. If I use this now, my skin just looks really dry and old, like leathery skin. It's not good, but for oily types it's fantastic. So that's a good one for oily skin, but if you're the kind of person who has dry skin, you want to get a formula that is dewy, or another term might be moisturizing, hydrating. Those kind of words are the ones you're looking for. They don't always have it on the package though, but I find that foundations are mostly for dry skin by default, and finding a matte one's a bit trickier. So if you've got dry skin, it will be easier for you to find one, I think. So for me at the moment, because I've got drier skin, I use foundations like the Benefit Hello Flawless. This one's quite dewy. Other ones that are quite good are the Bourjois Healthy Mix Serum. That one's really good. Rimmel, their long-lasting foundation. There's Lasting Finish, the one with a red cap. There are some foundation formulas or foundation products which they release a line for dry skin and a line for oily skin. So a good example of that one is the Revlon Color Stay, which is this one here. So with these you'll see, I don't know if you can read that line there, but it actually says for normal dry skin, and they also have all the same colors in a different formula which says on there in really small writing that it's for combination to oily skin. So I used to use the combination to oily skin of this foundation, which was perfect. It's a really good long-lasting foundation. If you find that makeup usually breaks up on your pores quite quickly, but I found that as my skin was changing over the years as I got older, that foundation was actually too drying for my skin, and so now I've switched to this normal, the one for normal to dry skin, which is perfect for me now. Another couple of examples of foundations which have both options are Maybelline. They've got the Fit Me foundation, so that comes in both dewy and smooth, is for dry skin, and matte and poreless is for the oily skin. Although that foundation isn't all that mattifying, I find that I can get away with using that fine, but people with really oily skin find it still makes their skin really oily. Another example is NARS. They have the Sheer Glow foundation, which is great for dry skin, but they also have the All Day Luminous Weightless foundation, which is like the matte version of that formula. I've been using that formula for the last year and a bit and have found that it is a bit dry for me, so I'll be switching to the Sheer Glow once that one runs out. But I find if you're somewhere in between, that the best way to go about it is to go for a foundation that's slightly on the dewier side, because you can always mattify it a bit more with powder later. If you get a foundation that's too drying to start with, there's not much you can do about trying to make it more dewy after that. Next thing is color correcting and concealing. I'm not a big fan of color correcting, only because I find that the formula is usually quite thick and pasty, and it just adds extra texture to your skin and makes it look cakey. But there are some circumstances where you need some help. So I only have one color correcting product, and it's this one by Red Earth. I'll just let you have a sneak peek. It's a bit gross, sorry. So you can see it's got all the different colors for different situations, whether it be covering up dark spots or red spots. Most beauty brands came out with a color correcting palette last year. They're quite popular at the moment, so they're not hard to find. If you find that you have particularly red marks on your skin or maybe discoloration, I wouldn't use it for your under eyes because it is so thick, and for under eyes you really need something that's not so cakey. Yeah, so I wouldn't really recommend color correcting unless you have something significant to cover, like a birthmark or something like that. Now for concealers, I've got quite a few. This is my collection here. So concealers, again, it depends what kind of skin you have. You can get moisturizing ones, or you can get more drier ones depending on what you're after. Concealers can be broken up into two main categories, and that is a brightening concealer and a correcting concealer. So most people tend to get one that's in their actual skin shade, so that's to correct blemishes and that kind of thing, trying to make your skin look the right color. But then you have brightening concealers, which is mostly for just under the eye, to cover up any dark circles and to kind of highlight that bit of your face a bit more to make it more prominent. For example, I've got these two concealers here. You can see this one's a bit darker. This one I use more for a natural look or for covering up blemishes on my skin because it's closer to my skin tone. This one is pretty much white, like it doesn't get much whiter than this. And so this I use under my eye as a brightening concealer. Actually, while I'm on these two, this is the Maybelline Fit Me concealer. It's a bit gunky, but never mind that. So this one's really creamy, for example, so it's really good if you find that it creases a ton under here or it gets really dry. This I really like for moisturizing the under eye area, whereas this one is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer. While it has the word creamy in it, I find it very drying. It's more of a matte concealer. This is good for having it last all day, like a really strong full coverage concealer, but it is quite drying. So it depends on the look you're going for and what your day is going to look like. There's also other ones, like I've got these two here. This is the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind. This one claims to erase dark circles, and it's also got goji berry and some other chemicals in it, which is to lighten dark circles of your skin. This works really well. It's quite moisturizing, and I find that it does lighten your dark circles if you use it every day. Won't completely get rid of them, but it does help. And this one, for example, is the Bye Bye Under Eye Concealer from IT Cosmetics. And so this one's got collagen and vitamin C and vitamin K in it for the same reason that it's not just a concealer, but it's a treatment as well. So a lot of concealers will have this, so it kind of acts like an under eye treatment as well as a concealer, which is great because you can have it working on your skin all day while you're wearing it. And I've also got, like, for example, you can get these really thick concealers which come in a pan. Whoops. So these ones are from Benefits, the Boyoing. This again is similar to the color correcting ones where it's quite thick, so I would only use that on my face if I had a large spot like this one here. But I would never use that on your under eyes because it just looks terrible. Next on the list is setting powder. This one I think bamboozles people the most, as in people who aren't part of the beauty community. It seems a bit pointless, I guess, without understanding why it exists. So I've got a couple of examples here. So with powders you can get either a pressed powder like this one here. This is about to run out. So pressed as in it's in a pan, it's very much in there, it's not going to fall out. Or the other type is a loose setting powder. So I've got a couple here. And so these are, it's a loose powder in the little canister down here. And then it has like a sieve. So the idea is that you get a little bit into this part here to use so it doesn't go completely everywhere, because being a loose powder, it will just fly around. So the point of setting powder is, one, to set your foundation and concealer. This is something that I think a lot of people don't get taught, especially when you're younger, and I think people grow up without realizing that that's a thing that you even do. So what I mean by setting foundation and concealer is that you'll notice that when you put on your foundation that it still has a little bit of a sheen to it. It looks wet, like when you're painting something and it needs to dry. So that's where setting powder comes in, is that you get a very light amount of it and you pat it all over your foundation and it sets it in place. So that takes away that painted on look and it just kind of seals it in to make sure it lasts all day and doesn't get wiped off easily. So it means you can touch your face a little bit and it's not going to go everywhere like it normally would. How much you set your foundation comes down to the skin type you have. Like with everything, it's best to start with a little bit and work your way up. If you use too much setting powder, you'll very quickly look cakey and it's not a good look at all. So start with a very light amount, and then if you find that throughout the day you're starting to get oily and you need some touch up, then you can put some more on. But that's something you'll learn about yourself in time, that how much you actually need for a whole day. So setting powder can be applied with either a brush, a powder brush, so that's the really big fluffy ones. I'll do a video on brushes later on and explain that a bit better. You can also apply powder with a sponge, such as a beauty blender or any of the dupes, or even just the sponges from those little triangle sponges you can get from the store. And the other way you can set it is with a big beauty puff, you know, the big round fluffy things that you bounce on your face. The other thing to mention about setting powders is the colours. Setting powders will either come in a particular shade, just like with your foundation and concealer, or they come in translucent. So translucent meaning that it's somewhat invisible, so it would suit any skin type. You can put it on and it'll just, it won't add any colour to your skin, it'll just set it as an invisible powder. So all the ones I have are transparent. I've never had a coloured one because I've had bad experiences with them in the past where it just didn't match, or it ruined my foundation. So I leave the colour for the foundation and concealer, and then I top it all off with a translucent powder. And lastly, for the face base products, I've got setting spray. So this is the only one that I have, but I think pretty much every brand has one of these now. NYX has got one, L'Oreal has one, MAC of course has got one, Urban Decay actually have a very good one. They all differ of course in quality and price depending what you need. Some are better for oily skin, some are better for dry skin, but setting spray actually has a lot of uses. So firstly, the most obvious one is the setting, meaning that once you've done all your makeup, you put on your foundation, your concealer, your powder, you then spray a bit of this. You then get your setting spray and spray it from a distance all over your face, and you'll feel it lightly land all over your skin. It creates like a film over your face so that when it dries, it just keeps your makeup there for longer. So it's just a way of adding some longevity to your makeup. Another use is that if you have quite oily skin and therefore use a lot of matte products to then soak up all that oil, sometimes it can look a little bit too matte. Or maybe if you've got very dry skin and you're using moisturizing products but it still looks quite dry, setting spray will help add a bit of moisture back to it or add a bit of dewiness. And its last use that I know of is to make your eyeshadow pop. So what you do is you spray a bit of this onto the brush that you're using, usually a very dense brush, and then you put it into the eyeshadow and then you place it on your lid, and it just makes it so much more colourful and shiny. So it's particularly good with like shimmery metallic colours that when you put them on they still look a bit powdery and you want them to really have some punch and some shine. So by putting the setting spray on the brush and then into the eyeshadow, it just creates a high intensity and it also makes it last longer, obviously, because that's its main purpose. You could also use it as well for any other powdered product, I suppose. I've never used it for anything like highlighters or anything like that, but the point being that it intensifies any powder that you're using. So that's the end of this week's lesson on what makeup products are for and how to use them. I hope you found this helpful and hopefully it answered some of your questions. If you still have some questions about some of these products that I didn't touch on, or maybe I didn't explain something very well, just leave a comment below and I'll make sure that I'll clear that up for you. Next time I'll be looking at some eye products, so that's going through brows, mascara, eyeshadows, eyeliners, and all the different types and what they're for. So stay tuned, I hope to get that up next week. If not next week, then the week after. Looking forward to sharing what I know and hopefully it helps you. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Hope you have a fantastic week and I'll see you next time.